Let's go to our next question of the night now, which comes from Susan MacLeod. Susan.
So throughout Scotland's history, immigration has been vital to the development, enrichment and well-being of the country.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
With Westminster's hostile environment, would the panel welcome the transfer of control and legislation regarding immigration to Holyrood?
Thank you, Susan. I think it was Theresa May who coined that phrase. Marie Todd.
Absolutely, yes. I would welcome control of immigration at Holyrood, and I agree with you about the contribution that immigrants have made to this country over the years. We are obviously facing a situation in the next month where European people who have come here to live here and work and contribute and are a vitally important part of our community and our society have to apply for the same rights as they've had for many, many years, the right to stay and live and work here. And if they don't apply, they'll suffer quite severe consequences. So,
well, like, you know, I came across this the other day on the SNP's website, and I decided to find the full clip just to have a little ramble, I suppose. But it's the way that the SNP in general over the past few years, especially since this Brexit referendum came and went, where they have done nothing but continuously stir the pot and complain and proclaim that European immigrants might lose their right to stay in this country, and they imply that that is because of a hostile environment. They imply that that's because of a xenophobic approach via Brexit. They imply that it's because of racist Tories, etc., etc. But I really want to bring people's attention, just quickly while we're on the subject, to Nicola Thinlips herself in 2014, where she said herself that, well, Thinlips suggested that 160,000 non-British citizens from other EU member states now resident in Scotland, Scottish cities and towns, could be stripped of the residency rights if Scotland was outside Europe. More than 14 million EU citizens are resident in another member state as part of the Union's core principles that permits free movement between countries. However, Thinlips said Scotland being kept out of the EU would put at risk the residency rights of people from other European states living in the country after it became independent. So essentially, just to cut a long story short here, if Scotland obtained independence in 2014, by extension, we would have been out of the European Union. Therefore, it would have jeopardised potentially the rights of European citizens living within Scotland. It's common knowledge at the time, but that seems to be completely glossed over as we move forward to this period of time where the SNP, they pander, they virtue signal, and they do nothing but fucking whine and moan and proclaim that human rights are being breached because if European citizens living within Scotland do not fill in fucking forms, then they might lose their right to stay here. Oh, wow. If they're too lazy to fill in a form, it's not our fucking problem. But the point I'm making is this was common knowledge in the run-up to the 2014 referendum. It was common knowledge. Nothing has changed, realistically. The only thing that has changed, I suppose, is the fact that the SNP are glossing over history. Bit of a tangent, but, you know, it really rubs me up the wrong way when you hear this bollocks, because it was common knowledge. Nonetheless.
I absolutely would like immigration powers to be resting at Holyrood. I mean, until recently I was a Highland and Island representative, and I know in Shetland, so immediately after the Brexit vote, we looked at how many European people were living and working in our remote parts of our country, and there's a huge number of Europeans living on many of our islands in Scotland. Many of our businesses can't grow unless people move there, so we're really reliant on immigration. And one of the most striking statistics when we looked at Shetland, we found that 1 in 4 of the doctors in Shetland were European. So they make a massive contribution. And the hostile environment is absolutely appalling. The situation that's unfolding before our eyes over the course of the next month shows us that they've learned absolutely nothing from Windrush. and they're just going to repeat the same errors again.
With power comes
We need
responsibility
those people here.
on this, Marie, though, as well. So are you also ready to police an immigration system and for people who do not follow the rules to deal with them?
I mean, if you're asking me, do I think that in Scotland we have the capability to develop an immigration system which suits our needs and which is compassionate and has dignity at its heart? Yes, I do believe we could do that in Scotland. Why on earth wouldn't we? It is a political choice to make a hostile immigration system.
What hostile environment are they talking about? What hostile immigration system are they talking about? This is the SNP all over. Little Mo here from fucking the SNP. This is what they say. It's a repetitive script at this point. You know, what do they mean by this? What does an immigration system that's founded in compassion and dignity, etc. mean? What do they mean by a hostile environment? Because day after day after day, there's boatloads of immigrants coming in that are essentially illegal. Let's not beat around the bush here. They're illegal. They're fleeing France. You know what I mean? Not to mention the hordes of illegal immigration that have come in year on year under Theresa May, under Boris Johnson, under David Cameron, under Tony Blair, etc. The list goes fucking on. Started with Tony Blair though. Well, it ramped up under Tony Blair. What hostile environment? What are they talking about? And when they talk about an immigration system that's founded on compassion, or an immigration system that's founded on dignity, you know, what do they mean by that? Well, the only thing that's sensible to conclude is that they don't wish to deport people. Anybody that comes here claiming asylum, irrespective of whether or not they have a viable claim, will be able to stay here. There'll be no deportations. There'll be none of that bullshit. Because every time there is a deportation, as few and far between as they come, the SNP are all over it. The SNP are quick to fucking scream to the hilltops about how it's a breach of human rights and it's racist and it's xenophobic, etc. Then they talk about an immigration system that meets Scotland's needs. You know, and they'll bring up constantly sparsely populated areas of the country, like Shetland, etc. Yeah, an immigration system that meets our needs. We need immigrants because there's not enough Scots. You know? Not once, though, do they ever ask the Scottish people whether or not they have an opinion on this. No, they're supposed to be our elected representatives, but they don't represent us at all. If you pay any attention, they don't fucking represent you at all because you're expendable to these people. You're fucking expendable, you know? But it really irritates me when they bang on about this hostile environment. There is no hostile environment. It's just shit. One thing that has been consistent throughout the inconsistencies that make up the SNP is the fact that they have consistently banged on about devolved immigration powers. They proclaim that their number one objective is independence. That's shite. That's just a means to win elections, in my opinion. But one thing they have been very fucking consistent on, one thing that they have never dropped since they become a majority or a minority/majority government and whatnot over the past 12 years now, is immigration. They do not shut the fuck up about it because that is their main objective, in my opinion. You know? The new Scots programme, working in tandem with the Scottish Refugee Council, the Syrian resettlement programme. Scotland was the first country out of the 4 nations, if I'm not mistaken, could be wrong, so correct me if I am wrong, but Scotland was the first nation out of the 4 to start welcoming, quote-unquote, Syrians, quote-unquote, to the UK. 2,000, 3,000. At one point, Sturgeon was on about Scotland becoming a sanctuary nation for immigrants, the same as Wales was doing the same thing, you know? That's all they cared about. That's all they fucking cared about. It's immigration.
And it is a political choice with which I do not agree.
But also takes the difficult decisions when it comes to immigration too.
Well, I would... I mean, what difficult decisions do you think need to be made? You know, largely, mostly, immigrants benefit a country.
Okay.
Largely, they make a huge contribution. They make a
There's bollocks about contributions to our society, you know. Let's look at Govan Hill, for example, or any area of Scotland that's ethnically diverse. You know, as long as they make a contribution, it doesn't matter. It's quite ironic coming from a party who claim to want to distance themselves away from GDP because of climate change and all that bullshit, but in the next breath they will simultaneously tell you that migrants make a contribution to our society. Which one is it? if we need to distance ourselves away from GDP, if we need to distance ourselves away from being a rich and wealthy and vibrant nation in favour of being fair and socially just and carbon neutral and green, then who gives a fuck what contributions migrant makes? But more to the point, who cares if migrants make a contribution to our society? Because the more that come in, it becomes more and more of a detriment to the native population. As they become misplaced, as areas become diverse, that's somehow a progressive achievement according to people like her. But the reality is the natives suffer. But they make a contribution, and that's what counts. Scotland has enough people, Scotland has enough resources to be able to sustain itself with the population intact. It doesn't need outsiders to come in. The more people you need in, the more resources that you need to waste, the more infrastructure that you need to build, etc. It's a vicious circle. We don't need these people. We don't.
Contribution to our scientific endeavours, they make a contribution to our businesses, they make a contribution to our society. We have, you know, I live in the Highlands, an area that suffered from centuries of depopulation.
Yeah, so do I.
We need people to come and live there.
No, we don't. No, we fucking don't. We do not need people to come to the Highlands, because this is something that I have mentioned in streams that I've been on in the past few months. This is something that I've mentioned in videos in the past few months. They are specifically using the Highlands as an example. The Highlands is our next hotspot for targeting. The Highlands is where they want to, was it Ben McPherson? Sorry for rambling here, but I'm sure it was Ben McPherson, Scottish Migration Minister at the time, or SNP's Migration Minister, I should say, and they wanted to implement a programme that would encourage and incentivise migrants to move to the Highlands, and their excuse, of course, was depopulation, native births on the decline, etc, etc. Nothing at all ever comes from the SNP or the Scottish Government in general, Scottish Parliament in general, to incentivise native births. No. We just need migrants. But what I find interesting is the Scottish Highlands is the last bastion of ethnically Scottish, if you will. It's the closest thing you'll see to an ethno state in Scotland at large. You know what I mean? We don't need immigrants here. We don't. I admit that declining birth rates is an issue. But the day that I see the SNP put their hands in the air and say, we've tried to incentivise native births and it's not working, then they direct their attention to immigration. That's fine. But they don't even do that. They're just skipping that entirely because, as I said, we're fucking expendable. They should be doing things to encourage Scots that have gone abroad, encourage them back. The Scottish diaspora, they should be trying to encourage them back. They should be putting things in place to train up Scots that are here to stop them moving further afield abroad, etc. They should be putting things in place to encourage Scots to want to move to these areas. But instead, they focus entirely on migration. You know, this is what pisses me off about the SNP. This is what they do. This is what they say. She's just one of hundreds that have come before her who say the same bullshit. We need migrants because people ain't having enough babies. Why don't you do something about the decline in birth rates instead of promoting fucking feminism, you twat? Bit of a long-hanging fruit hot take, but you know.
Well, we've got one here tonight.
We need young, fit people who are going to come and have babies and help us to grow our community.
We need young people that are going to come here and have babies. You see what I'm saying here? Scottish people aren't having babies, so we need young people from abroad to come here and have babies. We need brown men and black women and brown women to come here and have babies. You know? That's what they fucking mean. Oh yeah, you can make the argument Europeans, but come on. Nah, we're talking about further afield. And even if you want to argue that we're not, it's not the point. It doesn't really matter to me, if I'm honest, because I don't want the Highlands being full of Polish people. I don't want the Highlands being full of Slovakian people, nor German, or Austrian, or Dutch, or fucking French. I want Scotland to be full of Scots. I want the Highlands to remain full of Teuchters, full of Scots. I don't want immigrants to our places, irrespective of what colour of skin they have, irrespective of what race they are from. But this is the attitude that they have. We need young people to come here and have babies. The Scottish people aren't having babies, so we need young people from abroad to come here and have babies. Put things in place to encourage and incentivise babies, native babies. Put things in place to make it easier for families that are starting up. But instead, what do? They promote nothing of the sort. It just fucking irritates me. This is the SNP all over. They supposedly represent Scottish people. Oh, it's the people of Scotland because, you know, we're expendable. What does I keep saying?
I think he's done that. He's also helped us have Brewdog beer and many other fantastic things in our lives. So Jeff Palmer.
Well, I believe that Scotland should manage its own immigration matters. I think that, we in Scotland have a diverse society. And of course...
I know it's just buzzwords, but I am so tired of this rhetoric because it's constant. Every day, every fucking day, I read articles, I do a bit of research a day, and I see what's the latest juicy scoops in Scotland, and it's the same bollocks. We live in a diverse society. No, we don't. There's certain parts of Scotland that are becoming more and more less Scottish, granted, but that doesn't mean Scotland as a whole is diverse. Highlands in particular, classic example. Parts of Glasgow becoming unrecognisable, Edinburgh becoming unrecognisable, but that does not mean Scotland as a whole is a diverse society. And even as we talk about a diverse society, is that really a positive thing? It's talked about in a positive light, but is it a positive thing? Where we as a nation that has existed for hundreds and hundreds of years is becoming less and less recognisable.
Diverse a society needs diverse management.
So as Scotland becomes less Scottish, we need more and more non-Scots in charge.
And
who the fuck is this prick anyway? Jeff Palmer, some fucking black professor, the first black professor in Scotland. Born in Jamaica, comes to Scotland, now he's dictating fucking policy. Now he's sitting here talking about Scotland's historically racist past. Now he's sitting there on a fucking panel with some half-wit in the screen and fucking little Murphy Stenders talking about diverse management and the requirement to increase diverse management. I mean, fuck off. Oh, I'm near ranting. I'm sorry.
We shouldn't be, to protect somebody in Glasgow, you have to have the people. Gathering in large numbers.
Oh, here we go. They're bringing up the Indian men now.
To say this isn't right.
What do you mean it's not right, though? It's not right. Yeah, I don't know, mate.
And I think, therefore, it would be a lot fairer and a lot more responsible. Well, what the government is saying, that Scotland can't really manage immigration. And they can't manage the rights of people who come in. Of course, Scotland would take the same decisions that if somebody is rightfully got to be here, then they will protect that. If they've got to make a difficult decision, I'm sure they will.
2 votes for Scotland having its own powers over immigration. Jamie Halcrow-Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, but I mean, I just want to pick up on, well, firstly, I would like to say, and I think we would all agree, of the huge contribution that people from across the world have made to Scotland, coming here and working here and raising families here, and very much being part of our society. What I find so unusual about, or strange about this debate, is that there is criticism of a points-based immigration system, particularly from the SNP, which is when it was a points-based immigration system that was advocated in the White Paper for Independence. And I just want to pick...
That's true, by the way. Absolutely true.
Pick up very quickly on suggestion there that Scotland would, would obviously police a system responsibly. But I think the results of what happened in the last few weeks suggests that actually it wouldn't be. It would be acted upon as almost as a political opportunity. And I think that's the kind of main concern now. Once the Brexit vote went to leave, and it's not something that I voted for, but it was a vote that took place. Theresa May, as the Prime Minister, was very quick to come out and make very clear that EU nationals were our friends, our family, parts of our society, and we wanted them to stay. And that's what's obviously been, the system that now allows and encourages people to stay in Scotland and stay in their homes. That was very different from some of the language that we saw before the independence referendum, where when there was this big debate of whether an independent Scotland would remain in the EU or be fast-tracked into the EU, I think we probably all remember Nicola Sturgeon suggesting that might threaten the future of EU nationals in Scotland.
There you go. There you go. I mean, I never watched it this far, but there you go. I brought it up at the beginning of the video. And there it is again. He said it for me. It's just like they've got short memories, but I don't want to make this video too long. Let's just go on a bit.
I think, you know, this debate is interesting because if a country can run its own education, why can't it run immigration? And therefore...
Yeah, but Scotland's did such a great job running its education system, isn't it? Jeff Palmer.
To me, it's a facile argument.
I'm not sure that anyone is arguing that we couldn't do it. I think it's the point that to make the assumption that doing it here would mean it would be automatically better is the issue.
Well, I think that's a speculation. The point is that you could have said that about education, you know, and therefore nothing could be run in Scotland on that basis. And I think another point is that a lot of the people here are from countries which were under British rule and management, and we're entitled to be here.
There it is.
So, you know, we're not migrants in that sense.
You fucking are. You know, it just amuses me when I listen to bollocks from the SNP or just people that are advocates for Scotland to have devolved immigration powers in general, because, like, as much as there's malevolent undertones, it's the bollocks they come away with to try and justify it. But, you know, like, this was from the SNP, Olive Stando, who on his Twitter, I shit you not, proclaims to be a New Scot and a socialist and anti-racist. So, you know, the calibre of the SNP. But SNP's website, nonetheless, saying Scotland is an inclusive and internationalist country. You know, this is becoming a common phrase from the SNP, with a long history of welcoming people of all nationalities. I mean, since fucking when? Are we talking about the invasions from the Vikings? You know, hundreds and hundreds of years ago? Are we talking about the English? What are we talking about? You know, they're making out it's the same shit without a nation of immigrants. We've always welcomed people. No, we've not. We've not. You know. But nonetheless, however, the Tories desire, you know, and it's the glorification or the exaggeration, I should say, of the words, the deliberate word choice that they use, disastrous, draconian approach to migration is incompatible with the values of the SNP's society and the needs of our economy. Instead of recognising Scotland's unique demographic needs, because we're not having enough babies, you see, we need, as that bitch said earlier on, Little Mo from EastEnders, we need young people to come here and have babies because Scottish people ain't having enough babies. You know, we're too busy empowering women and making it financially impossible for young families to get started. No, but it's fine. The Browns and the Beams will come over here and have babies. You know, the Tories' new migration system completely disregards Scotland's needs, the SNP's needs. Scotland relies on migration to grow its population and fuel our economy. We rely on migration to grow our population because we're fucking expendable. This is the point. This is the SNP's own website. Nothing at all. They don't even pretend that they're trying to incentivise or rectify even the native birth crisis. Let's call it a crisis because it is at this point becoming a crisis. Record low birth rates since the records began. 1855, I believe. Could be wrong on that front, but nonetheless, the lowest they've ever been. In fact, they got lower last year due to these fucking lockdowns. When people weren't meeting up and people weren't meeting and forming relationships, etc., there's been a baby bust instead of a baby boom. Despite claiming that it works for all of the UK, the Tories' new system does not recognise any of Scotland's distinct demographic or economic needs, while Boris Johnson's government failed to consult or engage with the Scottish government. Experts estimate that it will lead to a 50 to 80% reduction in net migration from the EU, potentially causing significant labour shortages, especially in Scotland's rural areas that are already struggling with depopulation. You know, it's fine, we'll get BAMEs. We'll get BAMEs, it's fine. Well, migration enriches our society, and they just talk about EU citizens, but that's, you know, it's more than that. It's migration as a whole. There's a constant whining and complaining that they don't have devolved immigration powers. If they had devolved immigration powers, it wouldn't just be people from the EU, they'd be attracting people from fucking Africa and the Middle East, which they're doing now currently anyway. Don't be fooled by this rhetoric. Honestly, do not be fooled. They use EU membership or EU citizens as the scapegoat, but what they are talking about is immigration as a whole, as a collective, worldwide collective. But it seems more palatable to use EU citizens as the scapegoats. Yeah. The Scottish Parliament backed the devolution of migration power, supported by a wide range of experts. Of course they fucking did, you know. Scotland can't afford more Westminster's failed approach. Scotland's own immigration system would serve our needs much better than an out-of-touch system designed in West. Oh, it's out of touch. Oh, fucking how dare they proclaim that they're going to implement a points-based system, which probably won't come to pass. Who cares if they do? There's fucking hundreds of thousands of immigrants pouring into the UK year on year, but most of them end up in England. And that's not good enough. Not good enough. It needs to be more enticing for them to come here. The only way to remain a welcoming country and protect our interests is with independence. The SNP will continue fighting for full devolution of migration powers to Holyrood, but the only way to guarantee getting rid of the Tories' hostile environment is by becoming an independent country with the EU's juicy sausage up the rectum. An independent Scotland can be free from the cruel immigration rage, xenophobic migration policies, and assert itself as the welcoming country that's proud of the contributions migrants make to our country, irrespective of whether or not the native Scots want this. You don't give a fuck about that, do you? I hate the SNP, and any sane-minded Scot out there should seriously be agreeing with me in that front. But this video's going on too long. Apologise, and peace.